Area School District regular meeting of the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education for Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Harlan.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Garner. Herzog.
Here.
Olmsted.
Here.
Peschel.
Here.
Szilagyi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on then, our next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us with Dr. Cartwright leading the way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we move on to board and administrator reports. I have a short but very meaningful report this evening in terms of recognition. We always try to point out things that are going well in the school district. And the Oshkosh Area School District is one of 421 public school districts in the state of Wisconsin. And all 421 districts, as well as all the CESA districts, are members of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. That's a member-driven organization that supports, promotes, and advocates and advances the interests of public education throughout the state of Wisconsin. It is dedicated to serving as an advocate for education and students through supporting the tradition of local school board control of the state's public schools. And it accomplishes that through two pillars: advocacy and governance. The association is made up of 15 regions. I currently have the privilege of serving as the Region 7 Director, which includes most of CESA 6. Each of the regions holds an annual meeting in the fall, usually September, October, and that provides the association with an opportunity to conduct business, to recognize members, and to share new ideas for moving forward public education in our state. All the regional meetings this year were held virtually. And in the section of the meeting that was reserved for recognizing board members, we had 2 board members who are sitting at this table who were recognized last week for their efforts in leadership and board development. The association has a member recognition program which recognizes board members who contribute to their own professional development. Hopefully, then they bring those ideas back, and so not only do they benefit as individuals, but our boards also benefit. So the 2 members we are recognizing tonight, who were also recognized last week, are Stephanie Carlin and Jim Evans. When the meetings are held face-to-face, you have the opportunity to receive your certificate and your pin in the member recognition program from the executive director of the association, Mr. John Ashley. This year it's different. This year they're being handed out at school board meetings. And so it's my pleasure and honor to award level 2 in the 5-point level system to Stephanie Carlin for contributing to her own ongoing professional development as a member of this board. So Stephanie, congratulations. And Jim was recognized for moving from level 2 to level 3. And so it's my pleasure to also present the certificate of advancement to Jim for his accomplishments.
Smiling.
All right, so moving on, we now have the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog. So we have some good news to share with you tonight. We're going to start with South Park Middle School. Technology and engineering students at South Park Middle School are continuing their hands-on learning and problem solving. Students recently developed prototypes of a problem solving and design activity called Tea Time. Over at Oakwood Elementary School, they were recently featured on television. Our teachers at Oakwood and throughout the district are continuing to take extra steps to help parents and students through online learning. We appreciate the ongoing partnership with our families to make learning fun and engaging. Second graders at Emmeline Cook Elementary used the engineering and design process to participate in a Halloween STEM project. Students were asked to create a piece of adaptive technology that would help keep people safe and socially distanced during trick or treat this year. Some of the ideas and creations include candy slides, miniature cars to retrieve candy, and candy zip lines. The Oshkosh Area United Way graciously donated over 2,000 diapers to the district. The diapers will be distributed by our social workers to families in need in our Head Start and early childhood classrooms. This is just one example of the critical need for community support during these challenging times. At this time, I would like to again take a moment to provide an update related to our E-Academy. I am pleased to share that our district continues to be a leader in the Wisconsin eSchool network. In fact, based on our recommendation, the network recently approved the purchase of SpeechStream for all of its district's partners. SpeechStream is a text-to-speech application that improves students' performance by making online learning and assessment platforms more accessible. We are excited that our E-Academy students will soon have access to this valuable online learning feature. We are also continuing to make changes based on best practice and stakeholder feedback. Additional information regarding E-Academy will be shared in the coming days to help families better understand their options. I'd like to highlight an important update that was shared with our staff and families today. Over the past several weeks, we have been evaluating our approach to learning to ensure that we are doing what is best for students. Additionally, we have heard from many of our stakeholders regarding their experiences with virtual as well as hybrid learning. So we have taken the time over the past couple weeks in order to really listen to what our parents were telling us, listen to what our business members were telling us, as well as listen to what our teachers were telling us related to the hybrid learning schedule. We are committed to where as soon as possible that we are able to open and have an in-person environment that is safe for our students and that we have appropriate staffing in place in order to provide a safe environment, that we will be able to have that option provided to our students. Candidly speaking, it's easier for us to have our students in front of us than to be in a virtual environment. Hence why we were evaluating how we were offering the hybrid model, because we, again, once we're seeing that the data is indicating it is safe, that is our goal, is to return into hybrid learning as soon as possible. Given that information, we knew from listening to our constituents that we needed to revise how we are offering hybrid learning. The model that we did at the beginning of the year was very intentional, and it had a purpose. The purpose was to have as much face time with our teachers as possible at the beginning of the year. We knew at that point in time, as we've all had the conversations, that it was at some point we knew we were going to have to go virtual. Therefore, having our students in front of our teachers in order to build those relationships, and for our kindergartners, first grade, second grade, and third grade to learn how to use technology that they've never had before, because that was brand new for us this year, and how to access their classes and own their Chromebooks. In addition, for sixth graders who had no experience working in the Canvas platform, how to go onto Canvas in order to access their instruction. So having all of that information, the AB alternating day model served that purpose. But again, listening to our community and others, what we were hearing was it was inconsistent. It was very difficult for parents to figure out, okay, is this A, B, or B day, given the day of the week. We also heard from our teachers that this is very difficult because we don't have enough planning time at this point in time in order to put the online lessons in front of our students. And so we needed to try to figure out what is a good approach. We also needed to take into consideration a lot of safety factors. For example, There are different types of hybrid learning, which we've all learned about much earlier this year. You could potentially do like an AA, be a Monday, Tuesday, virtual, BB, on Thursday, Friday. But the problem with that model was then that means that there are literally 5 days in between when you're seeing students. And from a safety perspective and also an instructional perspective, we decided that that was not the model that we wanted to implement within the Oshkosh Area School District. What do I mean by safety? Well, what I mean is a lot of times there are a variety of things that we serve our students well beyond what happens inside the classroom. So if a student is really having some significant mental health needs and needs to see one of our counselors more than once a week, ideally you don't want to do that 2 days in a row. You usually have space in between there so that students have an opportunity to process the information that they received from the counselor. That's one example. Another example is that we want to make sure that we're providing some consistency for our children, so that way, and we're able to provide eyes on children and making sure that they're okay. Another thing that we took into consideration related to the instructional model is we knew if it was 2 days in a row, more than likely our teachers would be trying to do new instruction on both days, which is not a healthy process for the learning process. In learning, oftentimes what happens is that students receive new instruction, then they receive what is known as scaffolded practice, and then they receive what is known as independent practice. And within there, you have small group instruction, those kind of things. This happens on a daily basis inside of every one of our classrooms, especially at the elementary school level. At the elementary school level, our children are not receiving 7 to 8 hours of direct instruction. That just doesn't happen. Because throughout the school day, of course, there's lunch, there's special areas, there's recess. Our teachers oftentimes will chunk the instruction. So they do direct instruction, then they start doing some of that scaffolding practice. That's oftentimes seen by group work. And then from there, what ends up happening from there is then there's also independent practice, while the teacher goes and works with some of the students who may be struggling and are not accessing the new material as well as they should be. And so they provide some additional supports for them. And that's how our typical elementary school will look like. So knowing that 2 days in a row, that type of instructional model would more than likely not be happening, and we want to ensure that we're providing quality instruction for our students and the opportunity to really absorb and do that in a more of a traditional method is why we've gone with what we have right now and what we announced today. So when in Model 3, students will attend school in person 2 days per week on the same days of the week each week. And every Wednesday will be a virtual day for all students. So what will happen, so for example, if you are on Monday and you're in Group A, that is your virtual day. And if you're in Group B, that will be your in-person day on Monday. On Tuesday, it flips. So now Group A is in person, Group B is virtual, Wednesday's virtual, then it goes back. Thursday, Group A is virtual, B is now in person, and then on Friday, Group A is in person, and Group B is on virtual. So again, this provides for us to be able to see them, space it out. They have the opportunity, as you can see, where Monday, for example, I get new information. Tuesday, I have scaffolding of that. Wednesday, I have an opportunity now to start doing some of my independent practice. Now, it's going to be interspersed between those three, but that conceptually gives you an idea of how we would be able to implement this model. At this time, though, based off the most current data that we have, which was what was released to us last Thursday, the district is remaining in Model 4 virtual learning. However, we're announcing this Model 3 hybrid learning weekly schedule now to help our families start to become familiar with it and start making appropriate plans, because as I mentioned before, our intent is to bring our students back as soon as we are able to appropriately staff so that we can provide that safe environment, and when we have a downward trend for at least 2 weeks within our data showing that it is now a safer environment in consultation with the Winnebago County Health Department. So that is our new information related to Model 3. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. We are regularly evaluating our data. We do this pretty much on a daily basis. We have a lot of conversations around this, but we're really looking for that 2-week downward trend in order to indicate that we're now having a safer environment. And the decision to transition models will be made again on the state of COVID-19 and the Oshkosh Area School District boundaries with guidance from the Winnebago County Health Department, as well as self-quarantine levels and substitute teacher availability. So moving on, I'll go on. On November 3rd, district residents will be able to vote on 2 school funding requests, one to renew existing operating funds and another to fund school facility improvements. Our referendum website has extensive information and resources that explain both of these requests. We urge everyone to be informed voters. Make sure you know where you are voting if you're voting in person next week. And please remember to flip over your ballot to vote on our 2 school funding requests. And last but not least, on the screen, you're going to see just a few examples of where I've been spending my time over the past couple weeks. As you can see, continuing to do a lot of meetings, continuing to actively participate in a lot of COVID updates regionally as well as locally. And with that, at this point in time, I'm going to transition us over into some of our district administrator updates. Dr. Gunlock, if you'll come up, please, for the referendum update.
Good evening, everyone. I know this is going to come as a shock, but I believe this is probably the last referendum update because we're getting so close to a vote. So we are in the final stretch. We've been continuing to meet as a referendum planning team. We've been focusing our discussions on continuing to get the information out, answering the questions that have come in. We talked a lot about our presentation schedules and also crafting communications for November 3rd, no matter what occurs, just making sure that we're ready to communicate back with the public. We recently completed a frequently asked questions video that's being posted and circulated that brings up sort of the top 10 frequently asked questions, and that went very, very well. And we have 3 presentations left. Actually, one is in the rearview mirror already. For October 15th, we were able to present to the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce as part of their budget presentation. On the 22nd, Oshkosh on the Water Rotary presentation we did. And on October 30, this is the final presentation for the morning Kiwanis. So those are the presentations that we have left. We have created some communications for staff as well, making sure that they've had all their questions answered. I can tell you, given all those questions come to me, they have dwindled down to almost nothing. So any question that was asked, we've answered, and we seem to have gotten to just about everyone. So we're real pleased about that. So that's pretty much it, unless you have some questions of me.
Any questions tonight? Thank you, Dr. Gunlock.
You're
for your
welcome.
ongoing presentations. They're appreciated.
Thank you, and I'll ask for Mr. Kamer to come up to give us an update related to COVID-19.
Good evening, everybody. So since the start of the school year, each week we've been breaking down the Winnebago County weekly data summary. And that data summary looks at the case rate in our area over the course of the past 2 weeks. So the most recent report came out this past Thursday, and that report covered the time period of October 7th through October 20th. So the next report from the county is going to be coming out tomorrow. So when we say case rate, what we're referring to is the number of cases per 100,000 people in an area. And the way that the report breaks it down is it looks at the case rate for the entire state, the county, and then within the geographical boundaries of our school district. And again, that's over a 2-week period. So the case rate is then used to determine the burden status for an area. And that burden status could be considered low, moderate, or very high, depending on the case rate. any case rate that is 100 to 349 is considered high. Any case rate above 350 or above is considered very high. And for the 7th week in a row, the Oshkosh Area School District burden status is considered to be very high, with a case rate of 1,124. Now, the good news, if there is any good news, is that for the 3rd week in a row, that case rate has declined ever so slightly, which is a good sign, but we're still significantly above where we want to be as a community. And if you think about it, you know, if 350 is the cutoff for the very high range, we are significantly above that. When you break it down by individual age groups, especially of school-age children, for children who are between the ages of 5 and 9, the burden status is considered high. For the age group of 10 to 14, that burden status is very high. And for the age group of 15 to 17, it is also considered very high. And if you've been following our updates or the health department updates over the past several weeks, we often refer to the New York Times rankings. So each week the New York Times puts out rankings of current case rates in the metro areas that are the highest at that particular time. And for a while we were ranked number 1 in the country. Last week we fell to number 3, and I just looked before I came in here, and as of today we are number 10. Now, again, if you're going to take anything away from it, it's good that we're dropping in the rankings, but at the same time, the fact that we've been at or near the top of those rankings for quite some time indicates that there is significant and sustained community spread in our area, which is something to be concerned about. It's not just a brief spike in cases. This is something that is continuing on in our community. One other indicator that the health department reports out on is the testing percent positivity rate over a 2-week period. And really what we want to see is a testing positivity rate below 5%. And right now the testing positivity rate for our area is 16.8%, and that has been trending upward consistently over the past several weeks. And based on the health department report, I think they're anticipating that continuing to trend upward. One other piece of information, contact tracing in our area through the Winnebago County Health Department continues to be compromised. And at this point, we're really having to do our own contact tracing as a school district, just because they are so overwhelmed right now at the county level. So we have been continuing to train more people within our district to be able to do that contact tracing, to make sure that we are identifying everybody who has either tested positive, is a close contact to someone who tested positive, or who is demonstrating symptoms of COVID-19. And just as a reminder, the district also has a COVID-19 dashboard on our website, and that dashboard tracks active positive cases and active quarantines for both students and staff, but it also tracks the cumulative totals of cases since the start of the school year and quarantines since the start of the school year. And that's updated every Monday and Thursday, so that will be updated tomorrow. And as of this past Monday, since the start of the year, we've had 148 positive cases in our district, and again, that's students and staff. And we've had 2,304 students and staff having to quarantine since the start of the school year.
Mr. Kamer, I'm going to emphasize a couple things I think that's really important for our public to be aware of. On our COVID-19 dashboard right now, we of course report that out by school. However, we are aware that there are many other staff members that are not on that dashboard because they're not assigned to a particular school. So that could be, for example, our food service workers. It could also be the transportation, even because that's a contracted service that we have as well. And it could include custodians. So there's a variety of other key individuals that would not be showing up on that report. The other thing I think that's very important for people to understand related to that dashboard is the numbers represented, especially right now, are the minimum numbers, not the maximum numbers, minimum numbers. And the reason we say that, and please correct me if I'm incorrect on this, But the minimum numbers on this, the reason we say that is because this is, because we're at home right now, we have a lot of parents that there's really not a need, even though we've asked, there's not a need to inform us if the child's having a quarantine or is COVID positive, just like with our own staff, frankly speaking, because a majority of our teachers and are working from home at this point, and because they're working from home at this point, there's really not a need to tell us if they're having a quarantine, because they're able to continue to perform their job. They're just doing it from home. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate. There are a lot of families out there who choose not to report cases where their child may be symptomatic or test positive. And we've actually heard of quite a few cases where someone in a family will test positive for COVID-19, and a family member will then become symptomatic. And the primary care provider at that point will tell them, just assume that you have it. There's no really need to get tested. The quarantine, the isolation timeline would be the same either way. So there are most definitely more positive cases that have been present among our students and staff that aren't reflected on that dashboard. And one other thing to note, that we do have students who attend alternative programs or staff members who work in food service or other places that aren't reflected in the schools on that dashboard. There is an other column that does include some of those individuals. However, that wouldn't include our transportation, our bus, school bus drivers. Those individuals are not district employees, so it would be any district employee or student who isn't currently attending one of the schools that are listed by name.
And I know also, I'm sorry, Ms. Carlin.
No, go ahead.
I also am aware that today what was reported to us from the Fox Valley, so I'm getting this information from the Fox Valley Health Departments as well as the infectious disease doctors, and then as well as the COVID call that I had for specific within Oshkosh for all the community, well, I should say emergency type leaders that attend there. And what they're advising us is that the hospitalization rate right now remains high. However, what they also described is that and that is specific to Oshkosh. What they've advised us is that a reminder that there is a lag time that's involved with that. That lag time can be about 2 to 3 weeks. So in other words, even if we have hit our peak, it's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks for that to work its way through our hospitalization rates at this point in time. They are still at the critical level. And that includes all hospitals within the Oshkosh region area, so that so everyone is aware of that. I want to emphasize something that you also reported out on, because I think is very important for people to understand. Because just as I said, not only are we evaluating, what the trends look like within the Oshkosh area school district boundaries, but we're also taking some proactive steps at this point in time in order to try to be able to open up as quickly as possible in a safe environment. For example, you had mentioned about the contact tracing. We know that through Winnebago County Health Department, they do not have the ability to keep up with the rate of infection that's happening right now to do effective contact tracing at the level that we need as a school district to ensure that if somebody is sick or needs a quarantine, that we're quarantining the appropriate people to ensure that we don't have spread occurring within our schools. Therefore, what we have done is we are in process right now of having one person, and it's usually one support personnel per school, to be trained to do contact tracing. So they will be the ones working alongside with our health room assistants and our nurses. So they will be the ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting, which is making the phone calls, sending the letters home, those kind of things, once a nurse or the health room assistant has made the determination that yes, we need to do the contact tracing activities. So we're doing that so that way we're not going to be dependent upon Winnebago County Health Department in order for the contact tracing. And we're going to start assuming that role, but doing it in a way to where we're not overwhelming our nurses and our health room assistants, because right towards the end, before we went into virtual, that's one of the things that was happening, was our nurses and health room assistants are hired to serve our students. They're hired to serve our medically complex students, the ones who may have, that may be insulin dependent, the ones who have to have a variety of tests done during the day, the ones who have to do the feeding tubes. That is their primary focus, as well as, of course, students who come to the office who aren't feeling good, and trying to take care of them. But unfortunately, what ended up happening is we were pulling them away from those primary responsibilities in order to do the contact tracing. And that is completely unacceptable, and it is not safe for our students when that type of, when we get into that. Hence, we're pivoting, and we're going into a different trajectory and a different way in which to be able to start changing some of the statistics that we see on our matrix form, right, related to contact tracing. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit of time in order to get people trained, but we are moving in that direction. Another thing to help people have a better understanding of what we've been talking about with our substitute pool, I think this is very important. Well, I've been very shy to actually come out and say it like it is, but I'm going to go ahead and just say it like it is. We usually have approximately over 200 people that are available around, all right, 180 to 200 people who are available to substitute teach for us within the district. We were down to less than 20. Meaning we could not staff classrooms when people were out quarantined or homesick. That was a significant factor, as well as the rate of spread that was happening within our community when we made the decision to go to virtual. So what we are doing now is we're taking a different approach on how to address that issue and how to address that concern. In order to be a substitute teacher, you have to have the appropriate license for it in the state of Wisconsin. And so that means that you have to complete coursework, and then you have to apply for the license, you get the license, and then at that point in time, you can be a substitute teacher. You must have either an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree and higher. So there are two levels. So what we have done is we've turned to our paraprofessional staff at this point. And we've already put out an all call to them and said, okay, for paraprofessionals, any of you that have an associate's degree or higher, if you're interested in becoming a substitute teacher, will you please let us know? Because we will pay for the training for you to get that certification so that you can be a substitute teacher. Now, obviously, that means we're kind of pulling from Peter to pay for Paul on this approach, but it will at least get more people available to us when we can poll appropriately and put them in place as substitute teachers. Fortunately, the response to that opportunity has been overwhelmingly positive. So we are now in process of starting to work with those individuals who indicated that they were interested in this opportunity and training them. So again, that one's going to take just a little bit of time because it's a course they have to go through. Albeit it's not a lot of time, so I'm going to make that purposely known. But it is their time that they're doing it, and we're just paying for the course and for that certification.
Excuse me, if I'm correct on that course, it's usually offered at one time for like 3 or 4 hours or something like that. It's not it's not what you would think of as a traditional college course, which goes on for 7 weeks or 14
Correct.
weeks. It's a one time only. And I believe it can either be done online or they used to do it face to face. I'm assuming that some of those are available in a virtual
We're
format as
offering
well.
it online, I believe.
Okay, good.
And if I'm wrong, I'm hoping that someone on my exec team will text me and let me know I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. The other thing that has recently become available to our school district is through CESA 6. And through CESA 6, they are starting a program where you get testing with rapid results. And I want to make this abundantly clear, it's not a rapid test, because there is a major difference. It's the more reliable test with rapid results. And in the past, what was happening is when people were getting tested, they were not getting results, sometimes upwards to 5 to 7 days. In this case, we get results back usually within, by the next day. So for individuals who are not close contacts, I've got to make that abundantly clear. Individuals who are not close contacts. I wake up today, I don't feel good, my symptoms mirror the checklist that I'm supposed to do as an employee every day before I go to work. At that point in time, they're going to contact their principal. Their principal will talk it through with them, to really determine, is this a close contact, not a close contact, what are the symptoms? The principal has available to them a nurse if needed to consult with. And then the principal will make sure that they do the appropriate authorization for that individual to go to CESA 6, which is the testing site, in order to have this test done. That way, because right now the way it works is either you have a negative result or you have to wait 14 days before you're allowed to come back.
If you're symptomatic, it would be 10 days from
Excuse me.
symptom onset.
Thank you.
Right.
But still, that's for us, that's a lot of days, instructional days. So what is happening at this point in time is now they get tested, hopefully on day 1. We get the results. They're symptom-free for 24 hours because we don't want people who are sick coming to work, regardless, even if the test is negative. If you're sick, we don't want people coming in because it only compounds the problem, especially with flu season coming up. So at that point, what ends up happening is they're symptom-free for 24 hours. They have a negative result. They can come back to work. Now, it is at a cost for the district. To be frank with you, it is at a cost of $100 per test. However, on day 4, that test is paid for itself because on the 4th day, if they're able to return to us, on in 4th day or beforehand, that test has paid for itself, just in the cost of what it costs us for substitute teachers. In addition to that, we're examining. We have not made a decision yet, but we are examining for our employees' children, so teachers' children who are dependent. So not my 18 or 19-year-old who's gone on to college, but for my 5 or 6-year-old who's at home. And if they're sick, then I'm the responsible party to take care of them. Then we're looking at for those children to make this service available to them as well, so that they can return back to school sooner, so that the parent teacher can come back to work sooner as well. So that one's under consideration. No final determination has been made on that one. We have not communicated this out just yet to our instructional staff, except for the ones watching now. So pardon about that.
I'm sure they all are.
What's that?
They're all watching.
But again, this is something we're in the final stages of making all the agreements that's necessary for us to participate, making all the notifications. I know we emailed our principals, I believe, yesterday with the information that they needed for their secretaries in order to have the training that's necessary to complete that online form I was talking about, the referral form. Because without that form, they can go to CESA 6, but they won't be tested. In order to put that in place. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now in a proactive manner and really trying to prepare to go forward with us getting back to some form of in-person instruction. And these are the things that we are doing in order to set up an environment to where we're able to, once we go back into hybrid mode, hopefully we're able to stay there for a while rather than transition in and out. While we built our system to be fluid, the problem with that is oftentimes it's unstable. You want to provide as much stabilization as possible with your children. You don't want to end up making a decision, go to school for a week, and then end up having to, unfortunately, go home the following week. We're looking to make decisions to where we're trying to create an environment to where we'll be able to not have staffing problems, to provide that secure environment, as well as with us making the change to how we're providing Model 3, the hybrid learning, to do the AB, virtual AB. That also requires us to retool our teachers a little bit as to what those days are going to look like, and then communicate that out with our parents as well, so they know what to expect. So these are a lot of the moving parts that are happening right now behind the scenes in order to get us so that we can come back to in-person, because as I mentioned before, that is our number one goal. We want our children in front of us as soon as we can staff appropriately and as soon as we see that 2-week downward trend. And as you can hear, even within our matrix that we have established, we're taking control of some of that data in order to be able to establish that trend so that we can make a decision to come back in person for hybrid. And come back into a quality system with some stability for our children over a period of time. And I cannot emphasize that enough of how dedicated we are to that. Also keeping in mind, please, that every decision that we're making, we are doing in consultation with the Winnebago County Health Department. Very, very important. And so these are ongoing conversations that are occurring. Is there anything I misspoke about, Mr. Kamer?
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you. Any questions related to the report?
Steph was first, go ahead.
Well, I just had not a question as much as maybe asking for some guidance on people that are not trusting the numbers and saying, you know, the numbers are exaggerated and we're not tracking them correctly. What would be an appropriate response for that?
Well, if you look at, you know, what the leaders in our country are saying, by leaders I mean leading physicians, public health, they believe that the numbers that we're seeing are an underestimate of the actual number of cases, and just based on what I've been seeing and hearing in the community, I would say that's most likely the case. I think there are far more people that have actually had COVID than what's reflected in our positive case counts.
Thank you. And I also was just going to ask, you know, to slow the spread, what can we as a community do, and what should we continue to do so that we can slow it and get our kids back in school as soon as possible, because we all want that.
Yeah, it's a great question. The most important thing we can all do is wear masks when we're around others. And then social distancing. I mean, those are two simple things that if everybody does, it would dramatically reduce the rate of spread in our community. But along with that, using proper hand hygiene, so making sure you're washing or using hand sanitizer after you come in contact with surfaces that may be touched by others. And those are the three things off the top of my head that we can really all do to help.
Thank
Flu
you.
shot.
Oh,
And a
flu shot too, yep.
Yep.
Flu season is upon
I
us.
got a flu shot today. I heard it lowers your chances by 30% of getting COVID. I don't know. So.
I'm not sure about the statistic on that, but
Yeah.
I think it's more about the compounding effect.
Right, yeah.
So that way we don't get into the flu season and then we end up having to deal with both
Right.
COVID and flu
Both
at the
and
same
flu,
time.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that is definitely an important thing. And, to your point, Ms. Carlin, once we do get into a hybrid mode, the number one thing we need help on, and I can't emphasize this enough because unfortunately it was reported today that this is happening a lot more than what we would care to be seeing. And it's happening for a good reason. In other words, in the mind of the individual doing it, it's a good reason in their mind. And it's for those families that have to work, in order to pay bills or put food on the table and those kind of things. If your child is sick or if your child is a close contact, keep them home through the quarantine period. Please don't send them to school and take a chance. Because when that happens, that's what closes down classrooms, grade levels, schools, districts. Once they are able to resume or be in some type of in-person instruction. And it was reported by multiple health departments today that unfortunately that's a trend that they're seeing, is that parents are just saying, I gotta take care of stuff, and they're sending their children, or they're sending their children and they don't even notify the school. And so for our ability to do the contact tracing, then now just went back down again, when we're trying to increase our ability, not decrease our ability. So, wonderful question. Thank you for that. Ms. Olmsted.
Well, you guys went over, I was writing down questions as you were talking, Matt, and I want to go back to our dashboards. So our dashboards are just, because they're per school.
Correct.
And I've had parents come and talk to me and citizens come talk to me about this, which I don't think that a lot of people don't understand the broad spectrum of the schools. So you have an elementary school, they may not have any cases, but they're not considering busing and getting kids there. They're not considering the food, which our high schools take care of all their food. They're not considering janitors that might be out that need to clean that school. They're not thinking about those food, janitors, nurses, we don't have substitutes for. We have substitutes for teachers, but we don't have substitutes for our janitors. We don't have substitutes for our food. We don't have substitutes for our nurses. If they're out, schools can't function. So I think that a lot of parents need to understand that, like, I'm talking if they're out or they're sick, you have these departments, you can't, when that goes through a school, it's not just about the students and the teachers, but there's so much more that supports every school in our district, elementary, middle, and high school. So when we're looking at those numbers, that doesn't include food service or janitors, right? That's what we just said, those numbers on our dashboards. It just is our staff, which would be teachers then?
If there are custodians or others that are exclusive to that particular school, then
Right.
they would be included. If it's a staff
Okay.
member who may be split between several schools, or somebody in food service who doesn't really have a home school,
Okay.
then those individuals would be reflected elsewhere.
Okay, so those are kind of the others and stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then,
And if I may, just a
yeah,
clarification.
please, if I'm wrong, please.
No, I
tell-
just
yeah.
want to clarify, I apologize.
Yeah.
We do have substitutes for nurses.
Okay.
However, again, right now, especially with the health industry
Yep.
and the demand, our pool is
Small also.
almost non-existent.
Okay, thank you.
Am I
Okay.
accurate on that, Mr.
Yes.
Kamen?
Okay, good, okay.
And when it comes to, so for example, now our food service, no, we don't typically have subs for
Right,
them.
yeah.
We do have contracted services for custodians. However, again, you have to have notice and you have to be able to do things, so.
Right, okay.
And we may not be able to fill, again, we're very, very, very limited on that ability to be able to do that. It's just like with bus drivers, with Cobuson.
Right.
Typically, they have substitute drivers, but
Okay.
right now, again.
So it's the substitute that are
We don't have
down
any.
to none, right, okay.
And
Got
one
it.
other thing I wanted to mention, you had said that there are some schools where there haven't been any cases. Since the start of the year, there's been at least one positive case in every one of our
In every
schools.
school, okay.
Either a staff member or a student. The other thing to consider is there are a lot of times where individuals may present with symptoms and decide not to get tested.
Mhm.
So they may just serve out that quarantine period and then come back. They may have been positive, they may not have been positive, but it's something we'll never know. One other thing to think about is the spectrum of symptomology with COVID is pretty broad from the standpoint of there are some symptoms that people can present with that are fairly subtle. Could be as subtle as a sore throat and some congestion, all the way up to somebody who has, significant symptoms that would require hospitalization. And then you
Okay.
have people who are completely asymptomatic as well. So one of the comments that I hear quite frequently is, well, my kid has a sniffles and a sore throat, and now they have to stay home for 10 days. Well, the reason why we do that is because there have been many times when those subtle symptoms led to someone testing positive for COVID-19. And that's
Mhm.
the hard part. You don't know. You don't know if it's a cold or if it's something more significant. And even
Mhm.
though those symptoms are subtle in a child, you don't know how somebody who is in close contact with that child and picks up that virus is going to respond.
Mhm.
They may be very significant in those individuals.
Okay. Okay. the testing for CISA 6, would that include those services also? Our food, our janitors, our nurses?
It will include.
Everyone underneath?
Well, it's going to include critical staff members.
Okay, good. And then I think you guys, covered the rest. Thank you.
Mrs. Carlin, did you have something else?
Go Liz first.
Or Mrs.
No,
Salaji?
I think.
I did.
What?
You guys were all looking this way when I was putting my hand up, so she saw me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to respond to Steph's comment about, like, what do we do? And you all made great comments about that. I did a y'all there. I'm sorry.
No, we're good,
So-
Mr. Peschel. I'm glad I'm rubbing off on you.
All right. So, but I think there's something interesting to talk about here in regards to that it's also a community effort that takes place in kind of shaping that and changing that. And I'd be remiss to not say anything about the effort that the city, the county health department, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau is trying to put together a strong PR campaign about making it acceptable to wear a mask and to making it acceptable to quarantine, or not quarantine, well, that too, but to social distance and to sanitize. And so they're rolling out a PR campaign about that in the next 2 weeks. Some of us may even be asked to have our pictures taken with masks as community leaders in the community, and having our images dispersed, doing what's considered the right thing, and sending that message. So there's that element of it, and proper signage, cohesive signage that is very clear of what to do, and doing it under the idea that of loving Oshkosh. You know, even though it's just Oshkosh, the district is bigger than Oshkosh, but there's that element as well. And then there's the element of getting out the right information from the right people as well in the community. So, meaning like our leading medical providers in the community talking about this stuff, instead of community leaders who have some knowledge but aren't really considered experts in the field. And so that's actually started this week, where there's been some radio shows with Bob Brunell and some recordings taking place to kind of talking about that, and that message coming from like the leaders of Aurora or Ascension, and dispersing that information far and wide so that we can get the right message out there, so that we can reduce this high spike that we have and flatten that out. And the idea is to bring our community back to normal, in that sense, and to do it in a way that doesn't impact all of us on many different levels, right? So business owners, homes, families, all of this stuff, looking for a common ground to be able to move from and springboard forward from that. So that's another avenue that's taking place in our community that kind of has started up about the first week of October. So so that's one other tool. So thank you.
I just remembered I was also looking for guidance on something else regarding our neighboring schools. I'm sure you guys get the same questions. Why can they open and we're not open? And Nina's opening, or somebody's opening and we are not. And people don't realize we are one of the biggest school districts in the state. And so
That's a very good question, and I'm going to be very, very candid on the answer of that question. I cannot speak on behalf of why some of our private schools are open. I cannot speak on why the actions of some of our neighboring districts. I can only speak for the Oshkosh Area School District. We take this very seriously. We are following the guidance provided to us by the Winnebago County Health Department. I can't emphasize that enough because they are the experts within this. And of course, included in that consideration are the conversations I just referred to that I'm very fortunate to be a part of every Wednesday throughout the Fox Valley region, and having the ability to have those conversations with those doctors, those medical doctors for which this is their expertise. So not just your general practitioner. I'm talking doctors which this is what their focus is. Watching what their projections are, what their trend data are. Those type of conversations, we're really making our decisions based upon what the data is showing and what it is indicating. You know my background, and all of you know my background, where, for the most part, I was a data analyst for years. I lived by the numbers so many times. And allowing the data to guide your way so that you can take the emotion out of it, because this is a big, hairy, scary thing. And I want to be able to say that we're really taking these things into consideration, really watching the data and allowing the data to guide our decisions in this. There are so many different things to take in. That's why we're being proactive at this point, working on getting our subs certified as, para-certified as substitutes, increasing our capacity to do contact tracing, increasing our capacity to get teachers back into the classrooms as quickly as possible in a safe environment, following the guidelines of the health department. And doing those things. I think that's really important.
Where I was going with the size question though too, is that it's a lot easier for a school district that's, only 500 students to get back going to school than it is for our school
10,000.
10,000.
Right.
So there's like a scalability too, and when you hear other, rural schools going back, those are much smaller districts, I would suggest, because they have one high school and one middle school and, not as many schools as we have. We have a lot of schools.
And we developed the system to where we can open up by elementary or by middle or by high or a combination thereof or all three, right? We purposely developed our system that way. In addition to that, one of the things that I believe is important to have an understanding on is also even the size of our facilities. And some of our surrounding communities, they have much newer facilities where they can spread out, or they have budgets. Maybe they're not considered low spending districts. Therefore, they have more cushion in their budget to where they can hire additional staff, and they have the space to put additional staff so that they can offer more in-person services. We just don't have that ability. We for a significant number of years, we've been a low spending district. Meaning that we do not have as much resources available to us. We're very, very tight on our resources. Hence, again, why we're even going back to renew our operational referendum. Yeah. And so those are some of the things that are out there. But that's a very good question. It's a common question that I'm constantly having to address.
That's a good reason for us to hope the referendum passes as well, because our older facilities, even when we're back up and running, we are not going to be able to be 6 feet apart in some of those classrooms because those schools are just too small. And so, facilities.
All we can hope
another
for is
issue.
that we make that people vote and let their voice be heard.
Yes.
That's what we can hope for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments?
I think Ms. Lodgy had something.
No.
We're not picking on you, Mrs.
Not at
Salaji.
this time.
We just want to afford you the opportunity
Yes,
to.
I've been listening and taking
Share your
lots of
voice.
notes, and I don't have anything to add on. Thank you, though.
Thank you. If I may, the only thing I think that's important is, because I believe in quelching rumors as quickly as possible. I'm very thankful for a phone conversation I had with one of our parents yesterday afternoon. Because one of the comments that was shared with me, he said, there's a rumor out there saying that you're not going to open up schools until January. And I said, holy cow, that is so not true. I have never made that statement. The district has never made that statement. There is not anything out there at all confirming that rumor. It is a rumor. Again, because as you can see, we're trying to gear up right now in order to try our best to resume some type of in-person learning as soon as we see that 2-week trend, downward trend in our data, and we're trying to take over some of those data points in order to help facilitate that, and you know, and our ability, like I said, for staffing and those kind of things. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that is a rumor. There is no validity to it whatsoever at all. In fact, January is probably going to be rougher because as January, February is the prime of your flu season, usually. I believe February, thereabouts.
Yep.
So, thank you.
All right, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I don't have the data analyst background that Dr. Cartwright does, but I do study those reports that come out weekly from the Winnebago County Health Department, and I do appreciate receiving those. One of the things that has struck me for the last 3 weeks, at least in those reports, and it's toward the top of the list, the numbered list that comes out, is that the recommendation for all schools in the county is that they remain in either hybrid or virtual format unless they can show that they can maintain 6 feet apart. And that 6 feet apart has really stuck with me, because when I think of, for example, Merrill Elementary School, that where you enter the building to go into the office, that's not a particularly wide hallway. I've been in that hallway numerous times when children are coming into the building, hanging up their backpacks or jackets or whatever. And even if you reduce the amount of students by 50% on a hybrid schedule, that's still not a lot of space. And I look at Washington Elementary School, particularly in the kindergarten wing, and I've been a substitute principal over there, so I've been familiar with that area of the building in particular. And then I think of E. Cook, the kindergarten, first grade, second grade hallway, where I've served as a volunteer reader. And when they have, last year, for example, they have students leaving to go to lunch and another group is maybe coming back from the art room, there's not a lot of space in there. So even if you reduce the number of students by 50%, my concern is that when we look at those buildings, and I believe Emmeline Cook, I believe, was built in the 1950s. I think Washington is about that same vintage, 1950s. Part of Merrill was built in the 1920s. Those older buildings were not designed with wider spaces where you could perhaps use hallways for project-based learning or for students working independently, maybe in a small group. So that 6-foot distance between individuals really sticks out for me in those reports. And so I just wanted to put that out there. But I know that our district consistently has followed the recommendations of the Winnebago County Health Department, who based their recommendations on the CDC. So I know that's science-based. And so, like Dr. Cartwright said, we can't speak for other school districts. We can just speak for what we're doing, and we've been consistent in following those guidelines. I'm sorry.
If I may, just for
Sure,
clarification.
absolutely.
And so we know within our secondary schools that would be, you know, the 6-foot rule it is very challenging. In our elementary schools, it is equally as challenging. However, with the work that we did this past summer, we were able to, for the most part, be able to figure a majority of that out.
Good, I'm glad to know that, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, but you're absolutely right. In the Winnebago County Health Department, it was, you know, hybrid or virtual, whichever can assure that you must maintain 6-foot distancing. So it never even said full-time.
You're correct, I've read those reports.
Pardon, I'm sorry.
Carefully each week. No, I'm glad for the clarification, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this report?
I can leave you with one more thought that really struck me this past week. Each week I sit in on public health briefings with Dr. Cartwright. And this past week, one of the more prominent public health official in our area had mentioned that over the past several weeks, obviously the case rate in our area has spiked dramatically. But what many people don't realize is that our area was not only the epicenter for the state and for the country over these past several weeks, but we were really the epicenter of the world for this pandemic. And that really struck me, you know, just thinking about the gravity of the decisions we have to make. We're in the midst of a pandemic that none of us have seen in our lifetimes, and we're at the epicenter of that pandemic for the entire world. It just, like I said, it really struck me this past week. So I'll leave you with that.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Kemmer, for that detailed report. Next, we move on to other reports. These are board committee reports since our last board meeting. I believe Policy and Governance has a report.
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yeah, Policy and Governance met on Friday, the 16th. All of the policies are in your board packet, so if you guys have questions about them, otherwise we're voting on those tonight. We have 3 that we pulled that we're going to look at, and they're coming back to policy. It is Policy 2260.02, the English language proficiency. Ms. Conrad, over the weekend, got some updates on that, and so we're bringing that back to policy in November. And then we have a new policy that Mr. Kramer brought to us, 8395, which is Student Mental Health Services. We pulled this out, and he wants to write a policy, and we wanted a policy that offers to assist districts in providing mental health services to students at school through a clinical site, and it has been established on school grounds and is operated by the healthcare provider. The policy provides an opportunity for the board to authorize the superintendent to pursue such arrangements, but would be required an arrangement, we'd have to approve it as a board. We discussed that policy and thought we had it, but I asked that they run it through legal counsel one more time after we made the revisions on it. So I wanted legal counsel to look at that one more time, and then maybe Neola before we make that, because it's a new policy. I wanted to make sure that we had all of our legal stuff in there. And then Policy 8390 we pulled, and that is Dr. Jones' Animals on School District Property. We made some revisions on that, and it has to do with service dogs, not animals. We made some revisions on what we would allow in schools and what not, and on school grounds, and your responsibility of having your animals on school property. We also are going to run that past, I pulled that and had that run past legal counsel also to make sure that we weren't breaking any city ordinances or anything like that about what we can allow and can't allow on the school property in the schools. So those will be coming back in November, and then we'll be voting on them the second meeting in November. But we do have the rest of them on there, which we went through. So our next meeting is November 9th at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Olmsted. Are there any other board committee reports tonight? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to the non-agenda related public forum. There are several people who have signed up. I just want to review the procedures here tonight, which we've always followed. Clearly state your name and address and the topic you wish to address. If you are acting as a spokesperson for a particular group of individuals, please indicate the group that you represent. State clearly and concisely the matter of concern, and please limit your comments to the time allotted, which is 3 minutes. Remember that the use of specific names of district personnel may lead to legal liability. In such instances, please pursue the district's formal complaint process by contacting the superintendent's office at 424-0160 to direct you to the appropriate administrator. We will begin tonight. I'm a little confused by the numbering here. I think it's Molly Boots.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
So I speak to you tonight representing a large majority of district parents. Our kids are struggling and they need you. Inevitably, whenever a discussion of COVID-19 and respective policies comes up, someone ends up retorting to follow the science. The problem is there is no consensus among all medical practitioners and scientists. However, the data, when freed from political bias and monetary interests, is quite clear regarding many facets of this virus, one of those being COVID's impact on our children. It is becoming apparent that social isolation resulting from the elimination of in-person instruction alongside peers and the cancellation of extracurricular activities has a significant impact on our children. In other words, the current policies enacted are far more detrimental to our children than the virus itself. So in the spirit of being my children's advocate, I am here tonight to present a clear case for getting our children back in school for face-to-face instruction and extracurricular activities. The most recent research I can find reports that in Wisconsin, there have been 0 COVID deaths from ages 0 to 19. My intention here is to not minimize any deaths. However, the reality is that when it comes to determining policy for our children, context and a realistic understanding of the actual risks are critical. Without rational analysis, we'd never leave our homes again, in fear of the innumerable risks we face every day. In 2019 and 2020, it is reported by the CDC that 434 people under the age of 18 died from the flu. Yet, as far as I know, we never canceled in-person instruction for any of our flu seasons. My daughter conducts the Oshkosh West announcements from our basement each day, alone, while every day on my social news media feed, I see posts from high school friends, college friends, and colleagues with photos of their kids participating in all kinds of activities, such as football, cross-country, tennis, from all across our state, including large metropolitan Milwaukee areas. Most of these schools have been in-person learning 5 days per week from the start of the school year. I'm asking you to please figure this out. I'm an essential worker. I go to work every
30
day.
seconds,
I
please.
work with an extremely high-risk and vulnerable population. I know it's scary, but as my daughter emailed her teacher last week, and I quote her, "I'd wear a hazmat suit if it meant I could go to school again." As many of you know, I love Oshkosh. I pride myself on living here, working here, volunteering here, and being an active member of our community. I trust you as our elected officials, and I trust that you're going to make the best decisions for our community. If Amro, Winneconne, Neenah, Berlin, and Fond du Lac schools can do it, so can we.
Thank
We
you.
are Oshkosh.
Thank you very much. Next, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
Molly to say her address, she didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Molly, could you state your name and address?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Just for our records, we need that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Molly Butz, B-U-T-Z, 3880 Crab Apple Lane, Oshkosh, 54904.
Thank you,
Thank
Molly.
you. Thanks a lot. Okay, our second presenter tonight, and if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Kaylee Dietschweiler?
Yeah, that's all wrong.
I'm sorry. Well, you're going to state your name and address.
Yeah, so
anyway.
my name is Callie Dietschweiler. I live at 1936 West Breeze Drive, 54904. I have something written, but I just wanted to say you mentioned about this rumor you heard about January. And yes, it is a rumor. I've never heard or read anything about January. But I've already told my kids, don't expect to go back to school with the way things are set up. Because with the way you guys have these models set up, it's completely unrealistic to think that we will be at 5% or less by the end of the school year. Completely. It's only going to get worse or stay the same. We're frankly crippling our kids' futures. They're not going to be able to function as adults. They are not getting the education they need, despite how much the teachers are working. So I have 3 kids, 2 of which only go to the district anymore. My 6th grader decided back in August that she wanted to enroll at Lourdes because she wanted to be in school. She loves Lourdes. She's doing great there. It's an incredible school. She's there 5 days a week. My 4th grader and my 10th grader, they sit home every single day. Pretty much usually alone because my husband and I both work. My 4th grader, he's learning nothing. He sits on his Chromebook all day. For years, people have advocated limited screen time for your kids. I can't even have that option anymore. There is no limited screen time. My 10th grader, she's struggling to stay motivated. She's struggling to complete her assignments. Mentally and emotionally, she is really going downhill. She has more bad days than good days. Aside from being a parent, I also wanted to mention that I am an ER nurse here in town. There's 2 other hospitals in other parts of the state that I also work as an ER nurse, and we are surrounded by COVID all the time. I'm well, my coworkers are well. You know, we practice good PPE and hygiene. There have been lots of COVID patients in the ERs. That is definitely true, and I do agree that there are kids who are testing positive. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I have not once at all in the last 7 or 8 months taken care of a kid in the ER for COVID. Not once. And I understand a kid's symptoms may be mild and they may be spreading it to an adult who is going to have far worse symptoms.
30
But this
seconds,
is our
please.
future, okay? These kids are our future, and them not going to school is far worse than them going to school. And I just know that it probably doesn't matter what I have to say, but I just have to say something because I'm not the only parent who's struggling. The ERs are seeing far more alcohol, drug abuse, SI, suicidal ideation, and attempts than
Thank
we
you
ever
very much.
see of COVID. So that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service as a nurse to our community.
Next is Anita, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, but I
Geller.
know you will do it for us. Thank
Anita
you.
Geller.
Thank you.
I'd rather not give my address, but I will tell you my name is Anita Geller Rigoni, and I live in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm a physician in Oshkosh. For
Ms.
those who-
Geller, I apologize, but it is required that you disclose your address.
Okay, I live in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, on Bellhaven Lane. 500 Bellhaven Lane. So I am a physician and a mom of 2 children in the Oshkosh School District. I've been seeing patients, hundreds of them, since May actually, and I started in March when COVID started. I see high-risk patients, and I, just like you, was fearful for my family, my friends, my patients. And over time, as we developed a better understanding of the disease, and I realized that, hey, if I have a mask on and they have a mask on, even if I'm in a room for an hour with them and they call me in a week and say, I'm sorry, I tested positive for COVID, that's the whole point of the mask. If we're screening and we're not going to school sick and we're not coming to work sick, we can keep each other safe without keeping our kids home. I think having a better understanding of the virus means that as a community we have to learn to live with the virus and keep our children at school where they belong. I have spoke with other administrators, including of large school districts with just as many students as Oshkosh, who have been able to keep their children in school and safe. And we have had studies now to say that both in the United States and in Europe, including in small school districts, that the spread is not happening from child to child or from child to teacher or from teacher to students. It's community spread. So even with our kids in school and the numbers in community high, we can keep our kids in school and safe. Please don't get me wrong, the teachers have been wonderful. They're helping my children the best they can, and that's with one of us always at home trying to help them. But it's still very frustrating for them and for us, and I see this with my patients and with my friends' kids. It's frustrating for all of us, not to mention the harm attributed with schools being closed, the emotional, the social, behavioral issues. We know this, studies have shown this, not just now, but in prior studies before COVID. If one of the main goals of our public school system is that every child succeeds, we are failing them by keeping them at home. So please, I just ask that you use common sense to guide our decisions and not the numbers, because the numbers don't match, right? Our kids have been home and the numbers still go up. It's community
30 seconds,
spread, not children spreading it in school. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service in our community. Next is Megan Casper.
Hello, Megan Casper, 3024 Holly Court. I'm here as a mom, a community member, a citizen, a constituent, a taxpayer, and someone who has had the privilege of a public education in this community. I'm here to support return to face-to-face education for our children. We are doing a complete disservice to them, and I 100% agree with the comments that have been previously stated. I listened to the pre-discussion on the things, the updates. It's disappointing, it's conflicting, it's confusing. The facts are the facts, but oh wait, we might be missing facts because we don't have counts in. I don't understand how you can make decisions based on having the facts or not having the facts. It's very confusing. There's a lot, you're doing things now you should have been doing a long time ago. It is so disappointing as a member of this community and a taxpayer to listen to this. Well, we're doing this now. You are so behind the 8 ball. I worked during the start of all this in an institution doing my job, working nearly 80 hours a week with a team of people. We had to be flexible. We had to do jobs that weren't our own. We had to pull it together for the customer base that we serve. There was no breaks. I feel like you are making a lot of excuses. I heard a lot of excuses. We don't have this. We don't have that. We can't be doing this. This is a complete disservice for our kids. Very disappointing. I have a child. He's 8 years old. He's a 2nd grader. He could never learn virtually. We tried that in the spring. I gave up after about 2 weeks. He ended up at the Y in a daycare service. Managed to do just fine there. He was in daycare all summer long, 50 other kids. He's now in a private school here in this community. They've been in school for 10 weeks. He's in a classroom of 18 children. They are not 6 feet apart. They're doing it every day. They manage day by day, one case at a time. If there's an issue, they deal with the issue. I'm very confused and conflicted as to why that can't happen in this public school district. Those are my comments today. I hope you consider them and take some sort of action, because what we're doing now is hurtful, harmful, and it is this disease and whatever's going on, it has hit the worst of the worst in terms of the poorest and the most vulnerable. Not only the oldest, but also the youngest. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And our final presenter tonight is Stacy Potter.
Hi, everybody. Stacy Potter, 3754 Leonard Point Road. I don't have a whole lot to add to what the other ladies have shared. I also think our kids need to be in school, and I really respect everyone's opinion on this, and I know everyone's made decisions based on what they feel is the best opportunity or the best scenario for the kids. And thanks for some of the information that was given tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and hear a little bit more about what's been going on behind the scenes. I just think when we were talking about the rumor that was in the district, that's part of a larger problem that I'm hearing about. I'm part of the Oshkosh for Education Board, so I've had the opportunity to work, or the committee, so I've had an opportunity to work with some of you. There is a huge lack of trust right now in the community to district leadership and the board as well. A lot of that comes from back and forth decisions, lack of communication, clear communication, lack of a really good plan that was coming out. I mean, it was August before our community started hearing things. So that kind of set the stage for a lot of parents to start really doubting what choices and decisions were being made at the district level. I saw something early on, the survey that was sent out, polling parents on what they want to have happen with their schools. The large majority of parents want their kids in school. Parents are the ones that should be determining, is it safe for my kids to school? Am I willing to take that risk? And if parents are saying yes to that, I think the district is beholden to that. And I think the school board, district leadership should be listening to that and figuring out how to get our kids in school. There is other options for parents who don't feel that way. And I don't think for a second that everyone shares my views on this. But ultimately, parents in the community elect the school board. The school board hires the superintendent. It should not necessarily be superintendent hierarchy down. The parents should have the final say, in my opinion. And I think let our kids get back into school. The risks, far less than what's happening from a mental health perspective. And my kids have the best opportunity right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm with them 6 hours a day. I'm helping them. I'm feeding them 3 meals a day. If anyone's going to survive this, it's my children. That is not the case for everybody, as you know. Our kids need to be in school. I wish Oshkosh School District would be visionary. I wish they would be bold. And I wish they would stop being so scared and communicate some decisive decisions that have our kids at the heart of this, and not people who are not medical professionals at the county level weighing in on this. My husband's also a physician, so I have a lot of information from doctors too, and every doctor that's telling you that this is a super scary situation, which it is, you have other doctors, the same amount, who would say our kids are better off in school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we'll move on to the agenda-related public forum, and I believe no one signed up for that this evening. So we move on to the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one voice without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Is there anyone who wanted to pull anything from the consent agenda tonight? All right, then the board will consider approval of 1, minutes of September 23rd, 2020 regular board meeting. 2, minutes of October 14th, 2020 regular board meeting. 3, bills payable. 4, personnel. A, appointment, resignation, and salaries. 5, Neola policy updates. A, 1130, conflict of interest. B, 2412, homebound instruction program. C, 2460, programs for students with disabilities. D, 2460.03, independent education evaluation, IEE. E, 2700.01, school performance and accountability reports. F, 3120.04, employment of substitute teachers. G, 3215, use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products by professional staff. H, 3230, conflict of interest. I, 3362.01, threatening behavior towards staff members. J, 4215, use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products by support staff. K, 4230, conflict of interest. L, 4362.01, threatening behavior towards staff members. M, 5111, eligibility of resident/non-resident students. N, 5200, attendance. O, 5460, graduation requirements. P, 5512, use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products by students. Q, 5630.01, use of seclusion and restraint with students. R, 7434, use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products on school premises.
So moved.
Second. Please call the roll.
Peschel.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we move on to individually considered resolutions. Resolution number 6, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the high school course additions, deletions, and modifications for the 2021-2022 school year as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
And with us tonight, we have Ms. Conrad to just give a brief overview of this for the public and for the board. Thank you.
Well, the overview. Hello, Julie Conrad, Director of Curriculum and Assessment. The overview will be very short. There is only one course edition that's on the resolution this year. We really felt as instructional leaders, our department chairs, as we looked at our course pathways, that we really wanted to be status quo for a year, to really look at how the things that we have learned during spring learning, during the fall with virtual learning, how will that impact our course offerings? What are our community needs? What's going to look different? So we would like to, we're basically staying status quo. The new course edition is Career Research and Development number 2. It is specifically for the School to Work program in partnership with Oshkosh Defense. And we had been planning that for almost like 8 months, so it was ready to go.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad. Are there any questions or comments on that? Please call the roll.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 7. Be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the 2020-2021 tax levy outlined below as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education. Fund 10, $44,183,222. Fund 38, $3,309,012. Fund 39, $1,850,000. Fund 80, $2,593,186, for a total levy $51,935,420.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Olmstead?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Szilagyi?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is request for future agenda items. Is there a board member who would like to see something on an upcoming agenda?
I had requested, I think I did it last meeting, or maybe I didn't. So the update on the diversity and inclusion work we're doing, just keep that on our radar. I think that would be good to get a report out to the board so we can publicize everything you guys are doing on that awesome committee.
We are including that on the, we'll make sure that that
Perfect.
occurs at least once a month.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
only because with it every 2 weeks, there's not as much
Yeah.
activity to report on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other agenda items for the futures list? Mrs.
I
Szilagyi?
may have one, I'll
All
put it that
right.
way. This may be better suited for the Education Committee, which I lead, so if the board thinks that's where this should go, I'm comfortable with that. But during our discussion tonight, the question that I wrote down, as you all thought maybe I had something, it's more rhetorical, but I wrote, what other data are we looking at? I appreciate the COVID numbers, and I follow those on our dashboard too. But I am sort of looking for data that expands beyond just those numbers. I know in the spring you reported data about what percentage of students were logging in and participating in their virtual assignments every day. So I'm talking more those kinds of things. I don't know if we have that already collected. I don't know if there's a plan to collect that. But I would like to see other data beyond just COVID numbers. I don't know if anyone else agrees to that, or like I said, if that just should come to the Education Committee, I'm comfortable with that.
So what kind of data are you, like?
So these are some of the things I wrote down, like the rate of engagement, like the attendance, how many kids are coming to log into their
Online.
Google Classroom,
Okay.
or the assignment turn-in. Do we have, and I don't know, and then I know like my students took the iReady exam, so I guess that kind of data. Are we seeing regression? Those are things I'm curious about.
And so if the data was showing that we were not doing well in this, would that be something that we would measure in order to?
That is a very good question. I have not thought out about, like, depending on what we see, where we go from there.
Okay.
I just think it is important to analyze data.
Okay.
And so, but that is a very important question. I don't have an answer for it right now, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure, and I guess my response to that is that I think what we're doing now in regards to hybrid and then virtual is 100 times different than what we were doing last spring.
Yes, I
And
agree.
so there should be a considerable amount of different data
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily comparable to each other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because
I don't
what we're
think we
doing
should
now
compare
is
anything to
100
the spring.
times different.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
but I think your point is taken, is that it's important for us to hear how our kids are engaging or not engaging in the processes that we've set forth for their education. And to me, there could be a paramount of data points that we're looking for within all of this. I don't know which ones are the right ones to be asking to look at or to hear about, to learn about.
Right?
So but I do
yeah.
think it's important.
That's why I said my first question that I wrote down was kind of rhetorical, like, I don't know what, I have ideas, but yeah, so again, we can decide as a board if that's something that we just want to have taken up at the Education Committee first. I'm comfortable with that, I don't know.
I think that's a board level thing. I mean, a board level request, in my opinion. I don't know what, I guess this is really
We could maybe
Vicky's.
look at it at the end of the quarter.
So,
And that's, yeah, I don't have a time frame either. I just think it's important to
Yeah.
look at it.
No.
I'm not ruling out or weighing in on any thing really. I'm just thinking about TED and our training that we most recently have.
Sure.
And so if we are going to ask for that data, then it's going to have 10 touch points for administration to get all the data. And so I'm asking, like, I'm fine with getting the data, but what are we going to do with it if we're going to ask?
Are we gonna use it, or is it just because we're curious?
What do we use
Yeah.
it for? To justify staying virtual, to justify going back, or, you know, I'm all
Yeah.
for data, but just thinking about what Ted said. It's gonna, they're
Good point,
already
Steph.
working on a
I
lot
know.
of stuff.
And that's why I was hesitant, because I also was thinking of that, about,
And a lot of balls in the air.
yes, like how much extra work do I really want to create, and is this something I should just bring up privately? That's actually what I was leaning to at the moment, just something I should bring
Yeah.
up privately with Dr. Cartwright, but
Well,
as
yeah.
I saw this agenda item, I thought I would like to discuss
Yeah,
it
I
with all of
always
you.
support data, because it's so
Mhm.
important for everything we do, pretty much. It's
Yeah.
a,
I-
need to be measuring, but.
Dr. Cartwright?
I just want to caution the board just a tad bit. I understand the purpose behind the conversation, but we're not noticed for this.
Okay,
Good point.
gotcha, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr.
So
All right.
forgive me, I'm just trying to keep
Yes.
us out of trouble.
So
Yes.
the agenda item is to maybe have a discussion about this at one of our meetings. Is that it?
I believe that's what she is suggesting, and what I can also report out in response is that this is certainly something that we can also look at as a potential written report.
And I wondered that too. I thought, would this just go up in the written report where Dr. Kamer gives the, like I said, the COVID numbers? I like having that update, and I would just be curious to see other
Other
data
data
points
points.
as well.
Are they doing
Duly
it?
noted. And again, my apologies to the board, I'm just trying to keep us.
No, that's good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's good. I got caught up.
Which is also why I didn't ask it then too, because I
Yeah.
thought this is about the COVID report, and I'm
Right.
asking for something
So
separate. Where
easy
does
to
this
get off
fit
track.
in the agenda? So, yes, noted for sure.
Okay, thank you. Are we clear on that then?
Yes,
Yes.
I have what I need.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, are there any announcements this evening? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
so moved. Second. Carlin?
Yeah.
And Bushel.
Please call the roll.
Evans?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Balaji?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies, breast cancer awareness month.
Yes.